Hey guys, Captain Jojo here. Going to have a little bit of Team Fortress 2 gameplay as I talk about a few topics that are near and dear to my heart. I am going to talk about third culture kids, which is abbreviated to TCK. So, TCKs are people that grew up living in multiple cultures within the first 18 years of their lives. I am a TCK as I've lived in the Netherlands for 3 months since my dad's Dutch. And I was also an exchange student living in Brazil for a year during high school. So, as a TCK, I see the world a little differently than somebody who lived in the same place their entire life. So, some of the main examples are the fact that I see people from other places, from around the world, and understand that they have lives that are different than mine. And I admire their differences and worldviews because I have experienced multiple different ones. I am going to talk about some of my experiences of living in Brazil and how they differ from my daily life today in the United States. So, as a high schooler in Brazil, I would wake up in the mornings and I would go and get some breakfast after hopping out of bed. And breakfast was usually bread with some butter or jam that was bought either that day or the day before. And if it was bought that day, then it would be hot. And it was really, really good. Usually here in the US, I'd like have some cereal or something. Um, but after getting up, then I would go to my parents' car and then we'd drive to school, which was what, maybe 5, 10 minutes away. And then after getting to the school, I would go into the classroom that I would be staying in the rest of the day. And I would go and sit in my seat and say hi to my classmates and um, obviously in Portuguese. So this whole time I'd be speaking Portuguese since it's in Brazil, and I would listen to what the professor had to say, but not really understand a whole lot. One of the big reasons that I didn't really understand anything was I I didn't speak Portuguese at all. Whenever I went over to Brazil, I had a little bit of Spanish knowledge and I learned a little bit, you know, doing some Rosetta Stone, but that was about it. So the first 3 months of me living there, I ended up teaching myself Portuguese. Um, this isn't necessarily a big difference between um, cultures, but it was something that I had to do as an exchange student. So after the first, subjects in school, then I would go and about halfway through the day, it would be about lunchtime. And there were two options for lunch. Number one was my host sister would either ask me what I wanted for lunch, and I would get rice and beans and either beef or chicken. I had the decision between beef or chicken. And so I'd get my little rice and beans and chicken or beef, and then go sit down in the lunchroom, which was a bench, like right outside the classroom. And the second option for lunch was you could go to the lunch lady, and she had a few options. There was a juice, like a Brazilian juice, and then there was also a little like meat. It was like bread with meat inside. and you could buy one of those if you had a few reais on you, which is the currency. So after my lunch, I would go back to the classroom and, have a few more classes. And my favorite class was English because I could understand what was going on. Usually during English, the professor would end up giving us some worksheets, um, or we would end up watching a movie. A lot of the times we would end up watching a movie just so that we could, or the Brazilian students could end up having firsthand experience with people speaking in English, sorry, in English, and they could, you know, actually end up learning the language, which is a little different than how we do it here in the U.S. In the U.S., it's you go over to your class in whatever language you have, and they give you a worksheet, and you do the worksheet, and then you get a test on it, and like that's it. In Brazil, they actually like have somebody who literally speaks the language like very fluently, and will like have a movie. Obviously, you do have grammar days and whatnot, but it's a little different. After the classes for the day, then I would go home, and mom or dad would pick us up. The host mom and dad, and then from there we would either have dinner, or if it was the weekend, we would go to the backyard, and dad would fire up the grill, and we would do this thing called churrasco, and that is the name for Brazilian grill. Brazilian grill consists of usually sausages and chicken, and sometimes chicken hearts even. And then you have your rice and beans and whatever other meats that you decide to put on the spit or the grill. If there's a churrasco going on, as they call it, it would also be sometimes there'd be like a festa, which is the Brazilian word for party. And you'd end up having a whole bunch of your friends over, and a lot of my schoolmates came over. We had the churrasco grill, and we all ate, and then we hopped into the pool after food and just hung out for like till late at night. And some people were just like, "We're gonna be here," and that's kind of how it is in Brazil. Whenever you invite somebody over, you don't necessarily expect them to leave until maybe 3 in the morning, especially if it's a dinner. Like if it's a lunch, you may expect them to leave before then. But if it's a churrasco dinner grill party sort of thing, like you don't expect people to leave immediately after they eat or something like that. No, it's a hangout. It's a social gathering. You stay there until who knows how long, and sometimes at some places, not where I was, but sometimes people even stay the nights and just kind of hang out. But we had the churrasco, and the first few times we did that, it was with not just I wasn't the only exchange student there, so there were a few other exchange students that also came over, and we all just hung out together. I'm going to move on to a slightly different topic, not really different, just away from I guess a day in Brazil as a high school student. So, a few of the things that are different from Brazil to the U.S. Whenever you go to the bathroom, you still have a toilet and everything, but you have to take your toilet paper and you have to throw it in a waste bin. The plumbing in Brazil is not as advanced as the plumbing here in the U.S. And you literally have to take your tissues, throw them in a waste bin, and then when it gets full, you chuck it, obviously. But it's kind of an ick for a lot of people. Another strange thing that is in Brazil is the difference in roads. So whenever you're on a normal road here in the U.S., usually it's concrete or asphalt, especially in the city. In Brazil, at least where I was living, over 50% of the roads were literally just dirt. And obviously some of the highways were asphalt and stuff like that, but you had no idea when the next pothole was going to show up because the government doesn't take care of the roads like they do here. And there was this specific pothole that I remember. It's like a foot deep, but it like had a ramp into it, and then it like had a hole at the way end. And it was because the Brazilian buses would kind of park there. It was their stop, and they went on it so often and stopped at that location so often that there was just this giant rut pothole where the buses had constantly, gone the same spot over and over again. Another difference between houses here in the U.S. versus Brazil is the fact that most of the houses there are made out of cinder blocks. A lot of houses here, you'll have sheetrock and wood keeping together the structure of the house. It's mostly cinder blocks and rebar there. It's cheap and it gets the job done. And then they'll have these for the roof. They'll have these red, like tile like roofing pieces, and that's different because here we have you know black shingles with tar. One of the big sport in Brazil is football, which translates to soccer. It's not anything like American football. Soccer is the sport of Brazil, as in America it is football, and it's practically a religion there. If you don't know how to play soccer, you might as well, you know, just not bother showing up because that's what they play. And so every day that we did recess, we at the school, which is about once a week, we went out to the soccer field and we played soccer for an hour, sometimes an hour and a half, sometimes a little longer than that. And I ended up learning soccer pretty well. But it's a thing there where you have to, have your team, and you gotta get their jersey, and you have to cheer for them, especially when they're on TV. And going to the games is obviously a specialty. Not everybody can go to the games, but it's a big, big thing. So the fans are kind of crazy about soccer, as we are crazy about football here in the United States. The culture in Brazil, as far as the people go, it's very much community based. So that means, for example, that if you need something, you can literally just go to your neighbor and ask them for it, and they'll do anything they can to help you. If they can't help you, they know somebody who can help you and won't, bat an eye if you need something, because they're there to make sure that you're doing all right, and you make sure that they're doing all right. It's very community based. So another of the things that people in Brazil do is they'll like invite you over for lunch. Like if you become friends that day or whatever, like they'll invite you over for lunch, and then you'll hang out, and maybe you'll hang out for lunch, and then you'll hang out for dinner later, and then you'll hang out for late night snack, and maybe you're gonna even stay the night, and maybe you get to see their cousin because their cousin's over or something like that. It's like it's very community based. It's people help each other out, and they don't mind helping each other out, which is very different from here in the U.S., at least from a standpoint that I've seen. People keep to themselves, and if you need help, then where's the money? So to recap what I talked about today, I went over first the fact that TCKs, the third culture kids, are different from people who stay in the same place their entire lives. And then I went over a day in the life of my life as a student in Brazil. And then after that, I kind of gave you some customs and how people in Brazil are completely obsessed with soccer. How life differs specifically in multiple ways from Brazil to the U.S. I want to thank you for listening to my ramblings, and I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. If you enjoy my content, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Captain Jojo out!